The scent of fresh pine and the comforting dampness of Lonesome Lake still clung to my clothes as I guided my reliable sedan up the gravel driveway leading to my house. It was a smell of peace, of tall pines mirroring themselves in tranquil water, of misty mornings and crisp nights spent beneath a thick quilt with a good book. Brenda, my college friend, and I had just spent a precious week reminiscing, each day passing in gentle laughter and profound conversations, uninterrupted by the world's worries. At 62, I was Judy Hayes, a retired archivist whose life was neatly ordered, marked by familiar routines and fond memories of my late husband, Arthur. My existence for the past 35 years had been anchored by this charming brick home in Greenwood, North Carolina, a place I considered my sanctuary. The house, with its ivy-clad walls and large bay windows overlooking the garden Arthur and I had spent countless hours cultivating, was a tangible representation of our life together. Every brick laid with love, every rosebush pruned with tenderness. It was where Arthur and I had nurtured our only son, David, witnessed his first steps, listened to his childhood dreams. It was a haven, a refuge, a living memory box. But as I rounded the final bend, my heart constricted. Something was wrong. The garden, normally a vibrant tapestry of hydrangeas and lavender, now looked as though a tornado had ripped through it. My rose bushes, my pride, were trampled, their purple petals scattered like bruised tears on the earth. My beloved pots of lilies and lavender, the ones I'd carefully tended since Arthur's passing 7 years ago, lay shattered on the walkway, sharp ceramic shards and soil spattered like bloodstains. And then I saw it. In the middle of the neatly manicured lawn, like a mountain of refuse, lay my belongings. Cardboard boxes hastily taped shut, several old suitcases I kept in the attic. My favorite winter coat, the one Arthur had given me for Christmas the year before he passed, lay haphazardly on top of a pile of books, volumes I'd cherished for decades, now exposed to the fading afternoon sun. I saw overturned picture frames, family heirlooms wrapped in newspaper like small corpses. Even Arthur's old fishing rod, which I'd kept as a treasured memento, lay discarded on the heap, its reel unraveling like a curse. I stepped out of the car, my knees wobbling so badly I had to grip the door just to stay upright. A groan escaped my throat, a raw, pained sound I didn't recognize as my own. Surely this was a mistake. Surely they wouldn't. But then I saw the note. It was taped right to the front door, like a slap to the face. My son David's handwriting, neat, confident, just as it had been on his old school essays I used to proofread late at night. "Sorry, Mom. Jessica's parents are moving in with us. There's no room for you anymore. I hope you understand." No greeting. No explanation. Just a cruel declaration of abandonment. My mind reeled. David, my only son. 2 weeks ago he had called, asking if I would mind if he and his wife, Jessica, came over to help me organize a bit while I was away. I, naively, had agreed. My son just wants to help his mother, I had thought. Now, I understood it was a pretense to orchestrate my removal from the home I had built. The neighbors, people I'd lived beside for decades, stood frozen across the street. Mrs. Holbrook, with whom I'd exchanged apple pie recipes and shared stories of our growing children, clutched her gardening gloves to her chest. The Johnson kids, children I'd watched grow from toddlers, stared wide-eyed from their porch. I could feel their pity, their curiosity, like needles against my skin. I could sense the hushed horror of judgment from those staring eyes. It felt as though my entire life was on display, dissected under the harsh spotlight of neighborhood scrutiny. I knocked on the door once, softly at first. No answer. Then I pounded, my heart thumping so hard I could barely breathe. "David!" I screamed, my voice cracking with shock and disbelief. "David! Jessica! Open this door!" A moment later, the curtain twitched. Jessica's face, stiff and emotionless, appeared behind the glass. She looked directly into my eyes, devoid of any sympathy. I could just make out the faint smirk playing on her lips, a look of malicious triumph. Then, the curtain snapped shut. The door remained bolted. In that instant, I felt a cold, desperate agony spread through my body. It wasn't just David's betrayal, it was the absolute humiliation. I had spent my entire life creating a family, a home, a life of order. Now it was all torn apart, discarded like trash. They hadn't even had the decency to wait for me, to confront me face to face. I didn't know where to go. My phone was dead. I had no keys, no clean clothes, just the smell of Lonesome Lake and the shattered remnants of my life. I stumbled back to my car, opened the door, and collapsed into the driver's seat, tears beginning to flow. Tears of fear, of rage, of utter despair. Hot tears streamed down my face, mingling with the bitter taste of salt. David, my son, the child I had nurtured, the one I had done everything for. He had thrown me away. I had spent my life building. I had worked hard. I had saved. I had lived a life of principle. I was a retired professional archivist, and before my retirement, I had worked at the Greenwood Public Library for over 30 years. I had dedicated my life to organizing, preserving, and retrieving information. I loved the precision of systems, the satisfaction of finding exactly what someone needed. I prided myself on my ability to find a needle in a haystack, to untangle complexities and bring order to chaos. Even in my personal life, I applied that same precision, striving to maintain a structure that David and Jessica never seemed to understand or appreciate. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay there, couldn't bear the shame of sitting outside my own home like a beggar. I drove into town, to a dilapidated motel I had seen many times but never imagined I'd step inside. I paid with the only credit card I had on me, the one reserved for emergencies I never thought would be this urgent. In that drab room, smelling of stale cigarette smoke and cheap disinfectant, a slow shift began within me. The initial agony of despair began to give way to a cold, simmering rage. I had spent my life documenting and preserving. I had kept records of everything: deeds, contracts, receipts. As an archivist, I believed in the power of evidence, of irrefutable documentation. And I realized, in a moment of painful clarity, that I had the evidence. All of it. I thought of Arthur. Arthur, the man who had always been my rock, whose warm eyes and gentle smile could calm even my fiercest storms. He had once said, "Judy, you are an extraordinary woman. Never let anyone dim your light." Now those words echoed within me, a soft but firm reminder of who I was. I would not let them dim my light. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the worn bed, each tick of the clock on the wall a cruel reminder of time passing. Instead of wallowing, I began to plan. I thought about my life, about the sacrifices I had made for David. David, my only son. After Arthur passed, I had made David the sole focus of my life. I had given him everything. I had funded his college education, even though he barely scraped by with C's and had minimal academic drive. I had helped him with the down payment for his first apartment. I had given him a substantial sum when he decided to embark on his first tech startup, something he vaguely described as a new UI platform for blockchain. I had seen him through his failures, his botched schemes. I had always been there, a silent safety net. And Jessica. She was a charming, intelligent woman, but her eyes always held a calculating glint. She had entered David's life like a blonde whirlwind, vivacious and demanding. She was an ambitious real estate agent who constantly hinted at the increasing value of my home. "Oh, Mrs. Judy," she would say, her eyes scanning my prized antique furniture. "This house has so much potential, so much equity." I had taken it as a compliment then. Now, I understood it was a cold, dispassionate appraisal. I recalled recent conversations. Jessica had pushed me to downsize my home. "Mrs. Judy, a single woman doesn't need such a large house," she had chirped, her voice sweet as honey but sharp as a razor. "You could sell it, use the money to travel, live your life." David, at the time, had simply nodded, avoiding my gaze. I had refused, explaining that the house was Arthur's legacy, where I intended to live out my days. Jessica had laughed, a hollow sound, stating, "I think you're just too old-fashioned, Mrs. Judy." Memories of their ingratitude flooded back. Last year, for my 61st birthday, David and Jessica took me to a mediocre restaurant, then argued over the bill right in front of me, eventually making me pay half. Last Christmas, they gave me a cheap scarf and said it was your last gift because you have too much already. Meanwhile, they boasted about their trip to Bali and David's new luxury car. The plan formed in my mind, precise and chilling. I was an archivist. My specialty was retrieving and preserving information. This situation was no different. Their greed had led them to believe I was a senile old woman they could simply discard. But they had underestimated Judy Hayes. They had forgotten that behind my quiet demeanor lay a mind trained to notice details, to find connections, and to build an unshakable case. The next morning, I rose early. My first stop was a local diner. Over a lukewarm cup of coffee and a stale muffin, I used the diner's Wi-Fi to find legal counsel. I needed someone sharp, someone who understood elder law and property rights. My search led me to the firm of Sterling and Grant, and specifically, to Miss Evelyn Ramirez. Her online profile spoke of a fierce dedication to her clients, especially those who had been exploited. I made an appointment for later that day. Then, I went to my bank. I had several accounts, some jointly held with David for emergencies, some solely in my name. I immediately transferred all funds from the joint accounts into one of my sole accounts. I also contacted my investment advisor to freeze any assets David might try to access. Arthur had set up a trust for me years ago, designed to protect my assets. David knew about it, but didn't realize the full extent of its protections. He thought he could simply pressure me into giving him access. He was wrong. Very wrong. I also placed fraud alerts on all my credit cards and accounts. As a meticulous record keeper, I had copies of every deed, every will, every financial statement related to the house and my assets. They were stored not in the house, but in a secure, fireproof safe deposit box at the bank, accessible only by me. This was Arthur's foresight and my own training. My meeting with Miss Ramirez was transformative. She was a woman in her late 40s, with a sharp, intelligent gaze and a no-nonsense demeanor. I laid out my story, calmly, factually. I showed her the note, the photos I'd taken of my belongings on the lawn, the property deed, the bank statements, Arthur's will, and the details of my trust. "Mrs. Hayes," Miss Ramirez said, her voice firm but compassionate, "this is a clear case of illegal eviction and elder abuse. Your son has no legal right to remove you from your home, regardless of whether his in-laws are moving in. This house is unequivocally yours." A wave of relief washed over me, quickly followed by a renewed surge of resolve. "What can we do?" I asked, my voice steady. "We will send them an immediate notice of unlawful eviction, demanding your immediate re-entry and return of your belongings," she explained. "We will also file a police report for trespassing and theft, given they have tampered with your property. And we will seek full financial compensation for your emotional distress, any damages incurred to your belongings, and punitive damages for their egregious actions. And if they refuse?" Miss Ramirez smiled, a grim, determined smile. "Then we take them to court. And Mrs. Hayes, with the meticulous records you've kept, this will be an open and shut case. David and Jessica will not only lose the house, but they will face severe legal and financial repercussions. Their real estate careers will be in jeopardy, and their reputation in this town, shattered." This was the revenge I craved. Not violence, but justice. Not emotional outbursts, but cold, calculated legal action. This was how an archivist fought. The legal notice was delivered the very next day. I imagined David's smug face contorting into a mask of shock, Jessica's calculating eyes widening in disbelief. The Taylors, Jessica's parents, would also be implicated. They thought they were moving into a free house. Instead, they were moving into a legal nightmare. Within days, the whispers in Greenwood escalated into outright gossip. Mrs. Holbrook, now armed with the legal facts, became my unlikely champion, spreading the truth like wildfire. "Can you believe what David and Jessica did to Judy?" she'd say at the grocery store, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Threw her out of her own house, the one Arthur left her. And after everything she did for that boy, The tide of public opinion turned swiftly against David and Jessica. Neighbors who had once offered pity now offered solidarity. Some even brought me meals at the motel, embarrassed by their initial silence. David called. His voice was frantic, a stark contrast to the smugness I had heard earlier. "Mom! What is this? A legal notice? Are you serious? This is crazy." "It's not crazy, David," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. "It's the consequence of your actions. You threw your mother out of her home. What did you expect?" But the Taylors needed a place. Jessica promised them. You were gone. We thought you wouldn't mind." His words were a desperate scramble for excuses, revealing the depth of their entitlement. "You thought wrong," I replied, the chill in my voice echoing the coldness they had shown me. "You assumed. You stole. And now you will face the consequences." I hung up. I wasn't interested in their apologies, only in their accountability. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Miss Ramirez was formidable. She filed injunctions, restraining orders, and a comprehensive lawsuit. David and Jessica, caught completely off guard, scrambled to find their own legal representation. Their lawyer, a nervous young man, tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding, a family dispute. But Miss Ramirez had all the documentation, all the evidence. The police report meant that the property was now a crime scene, effectively freezing David and Jessica's ability to live there or move anything else. The Taylors were forced to find alternative accommodation, quickly realizing the free housing came at a steep price. The humiliation was palpable. The lawsuit went public, a detailed account of their actions published in the local Greenwood Gazette. Jessica's real estate license came under review. No one wanted to deal with a realtor who had illegally evicted her own mother-in-law. David's tech startup, already on shaky ground, crumbled as investors pulled out, unwilling to be associated with such public scandal. His vague blockchain platform, it turned out, was mostly smoke and mirrors. The court hearings were swift and brutal for them. I sat composed, watching David and Jessica squirm under cross-examination. They tried to paint me as an overbearing mother, a bitter old woman. But my records, my meticulous notes, my calm testimony, and Miss Ramirez's sharp questioning dismantled their every lie. I had photos, emails, text messages, all meticulously preserved, cross-referenced, and ready for presentation. "Mrs. Hayes, can you confirm that you provided your son, David, with a substantial sum of money for his first apartment?" Miss Ramirez asked. "Yes," I stated. "On the 12th of August, 3 years ago, I transferred $50,000 to his account. I have the bank statement here. Exhibit A7. And did you provide additional financial support for his business ventures?" "Yes, on multiple occasions. My records, Exhibits B1 through B5, detail transfers totaling $150,000 for various seed funding rounds. And during these financial contributions, did your son ever express intent to assume ownership of your home?" "Never. The understanding was always that the house was solely mine, a legacy from my late husband." Their faces grew paler with each undeniable piece of evidence. The Taylors, sitting in the back row, looked utterly mortified. The judge ruled decisively in my favor. Not only were David and Jessica ordered to vacate my property immediately, but they were also mandated to pay a substantial sum in damages, including reimbursement for my motel stay, the cost of replacing damaged belongings, emotional distress, and punitive damages. The amount was significant enough to cripple them financially, forcing them to sell off their own assets, including Jessica's car and David's remaining tech equipment. The eviction happened within days of the ruling. This time I was there, not alone, but with Miss Ramirez and 2 police officers. David and Jessica, along with the Taylors, emerged from my house, carrying whatever meager possessions they could hastily grab. Their faces were etched with defeat, devoid of the earlier smugness. Jessica tried to meet my gaze, but I held hers with a look of unwavering resolve until she flinched and looked away. David, my son, looked like a stranger. He didn't even attempt to speak. As they loaded their last box into a rented truck, David hesitated, then looked at me. "Mom," he mumbled, his voice weak. "Please, can't we just talk about this?" We can make it right. I shook my head. A quiet, definitive gesture. You had your chance, David. Many chances. You chose to betray me. You chose to discard me. There's nothing left to talk about. But I'm your son, he pleaded, desperation in his eyes. And you treated me like a disposable inconvenience, I retorted, the words sharp, precise, leaving no room for argument. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty or love, David. It certainly doesn't grant you ownership of someone else's life or property. I turned my back on him. The police officers stood by, ensuring no further interaction. It was over. The physical battle for my home was won, but the deeper reclamation of my life had just begun. The next few months were spent restoring my house. The garden was replanted, the broken pots replaced, the trampled roses nursed back to health. Each act of restoration was an act of healing for my soul. I hired a professional cleaning service to scrub away every trace of David and Jessica's presence, every lingering shadow of their betrayal. I repainted the walls, chose brighter colors, and rearranged the furniture, creating a space that was truly mine, unburdened by their influence. The scent of pine from Lonesome Lake was replaced by the clean, fresh smell of new paint and polished wood. I removed the heavy, dark curtains Jessica had always admired, replacing them with light, airy sheers that let the North Carolina sun stream in, illuminating every corner of my rediscovered sanctuary. I purchased new throw pillows in soft pastels and vibrant greens, reflecting the calm and growth I felt within. The antique clock on the mantelpiece, which had stood silent during the chaos, now chimed precisely on the hour, a comforting sound of restored order. I also dedicated time to myself. I rejoined my book club, something I had let slide over the years as David and Jessica consumed more of my energy. The lively discussions and shared laughter with friends like Barbara and Carol filled a void I hadn't realized was there. We read everything from classic literature to modern thrillers, and for the first time in years, I truly enjoyed losing myself in someone else's story, rather than being trapped in the painful narrative of my own. I took up quilting again, a hobby Arthur had encouraged, finding solace in the rhythmic stitch of needle and thread. Each square, meticulously chosen and sewn, represented a piece of my rebuilding life, a quiet act of creation after so much destruction. The quilt I started, a vibrant medley of blues and greens, was a testament to the new tranquility I cultivated. It became a tangible symbol of my resilience, a patchwork of healing. I even started volunteering at the Greenwood Public Library, my old workplace, sharing my archiving expertise to help organize their historical documents. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was bringing order back into lives, just as I had brought order back into my own. The familiar scent of old books and polished wood, the quiet rustle of turning pages, the soft hum of the computers. It was all incredibly comforting. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just in my personal life, but in my connection to the community. My colleagues, many of whom remembered me fondly from my decades of service, welcomed me back with open arms and genuine warmth, a stark contrast to the coldness I had recently experienced. I heard snippets of news about David and Jessica. Their financial ruin was complete. They had lost their apartment, their cars, and their careers. Jessica's real estate license was permanently revoked. Her reputation in the local professional circles was utterly destroyed. No one wanted to do business with her, fearing she might pull a similar stunt on them. Her once flourishing network of wealthy clients had evaporated, replaced by whispers and avoidance. David's tech startup, already on shaky ground, crumbled completely as investors pulled out, unwilling to be associated with such public scandal. His vague blockchain platform, it turned out, was mostly smoke and mirrors, a house of cards built on my generosity. The debt collectors hounded him, and his once inflated ego was severely bruised, if not outright crushed. The Taylors, after their humiliating eviction from my house, had returned to their hometown in another state, their relationship with Jessica strained and fractured, riddled with resentment over the unforeseen consequences of their greedy scheme. They often called Jessica, not out of concern, but to complain about their new, diminished circumstances. David and Jessica eventually moved into a tiny, dilapidated apartment on the outskirts of town, their once grand aspirations reduced to mere survival, constantly bickering over their dwindling resources and their ruined lives. Their lives, once so focused on accumulation and status, were now defined by scarcity, public scorn, and a profound sense of failure. They were seen frequently at the cheaper grocery stores, their designer clothes replaced by worn, faded garments. Their once vibrant social media profiles went silent, replaced by an eerie digital void. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, not in a malicious way. What I felt was a profound sense of peace. I had sought justice, and I had received it. Their choices had led them down this path, not my actions. I had simply held them accountable. There was no joy in seeing them fall, only a quiet certainty that the scales of justice had finally balanced. I had learned to distinguish between righteous anger and vengeful bitterness. My actions were driven by the former, leading to a cleansing rather than a poisoning of my spirit. I found that true healing wasn't about inflicting pain, but about releasing the grip of the pain they had inflicted upon me. The desire for revenge had been a driving force initially, a necessary fuel for action, but once justice was served, it transmuted into something purer: liberation. One afternoon, Mrs. Holbrook stopped by with a freshly baked apple pie. We sat on my newly restored porch, sipping tea from delicate porcelain cups and watching the hydrangeas bloom, their vibrant pink and blue petals a testament to resilience, swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. "Judy," she said, her voice soft, her eyes warm with admiration. "You know, a lot of people were talking about how you handled everything, how you stood up for yourself. It was inspiring. You taught us all a lesson about strength we didn't even know we needed. My own son, bless his heart, he's a good boy, but seeing what happened, it makes you think about what's important. You remind us that age doesn't diminish courage." I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes, reflecting the calm within. "It was necessary, Mrs. Holbrook. Necessary for my peace of mind, necessary for justice, and necessary to show them that there are consequences for such callous actions. I could not stand by and let my life be dismantled. My duty as an archivist was always to preserve, and I realized I had to preserve my own life too. It's never too late, is it?" she mused, looking out at the peaceful street. A street that had once borne witness to my public humiliation, but now saw my quiet triumph: to take your life back, to set things right. So many people just give up, Judy, especially when it's family. But you didn't, and that was the message. The wisdom gleaned from the ashes of betrayal. It's never too late to reclaim what's yours, not just material possessions, but your dignity, your peace, your self-respect, your very essence. It's never too late to redefine what family means to you, and to draw clear, unwavering boundaries, even if it means losing those you once held dear. The concept of family had always been a sacred one to me, a cornerstone of my identity. But I learned that sometimes the ties that bind can also suffocate, and true family is built on respect and love, not blood and expectation. My life now, at 62, was truly mine, free from the constant demands and subtle manipulations of David and Jessica, free from the burden of their expectations and my own misguided sense of obligation. I had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is also the most powerful act of self-preservation. When you finally stand your ground, when you dare to say no to injustice, even when it comes from your own blood, you don't just reclaim your property or your finances, you reclaim control over your entire life. You reclaim your narrative, the story of who you are, unwritten by the hands of others. I now live a life of quiet purpose and deep contentment. I continue my volunteer work at the library, helping others understand the importance of documenting their lives, of securing their assets, of preparing for the unexpected, even when the unexpected comes from within their own family. I often share my story, subtly, without naming names, as a cautionary tale. I emphasize the power of meticulous record-keeping, of seeking legal counsel, and most importantly, of trusting your instincts and your worth. I've even started a small, informal support group for other seniors in Greenwood who have experienced similar family disputes, offering a safe space for them to share their stories and find strength in community. We meet once a week in the community room at the library, sharing coffee and our experiences. There's Sarah, whose daughter constantly pressures her for money, Tom, whose grandchildren neglect him, and Eleanor, whose art collection was almost stolen by a distant relative. Each story resonates, creating a tapestry of shared vulnerability and quiet triumph. It's a quiet but profound work, and it fills me with a joy that David and Jessica could never have understood, a joy that money or status could never buy. This group, these new connections, became a new kind of family, chosen and cherished. I've come to understand that true strength isn't about being unscarred, but about how you carry your scars, how you transform pain into purpose. The scars of betrayal remained, faint but present, reminders of the battle fought and won, but they were overshadowed by the profound sense of peace, self-worth, and unshakable freedom I had found. My home, once a symbol of my family, was now a symbol of my resilience. My garden, once trampled, now bloomed more vibrantly than ever, a living metaphor for my renewed spirit. Each bud, each leaf, each vibrant blossom was a testament to life's enduring capacity for renewal, even after devastation. My son, David, and Jessica, they never reached out again after the eviction. I blocked their numbers, changed my email, I deleted the voicemails without listening. I closed every door they might try to slip back through. I didn't hate them. That would still mean they held space in my heart, a connection I no longer desired, a tether to a past I had transcended. No, I felt nothing at all. A soft, clean emptiness that felt more peaceful than any false family dinner or forced holiday smile ever had. The silence from their end wasn't a punishment. It was a liberation. It was the confirmation that I had successfully excised a toxic growth from my life, allowing new, healthier connections to flourish. I had pruned the dead branches, and the tree of my life was now thriving. Occasionally, I would see them in town. Once, I spotted David pumping gas at a station across the street from my grocery store. His shoulders seemed slumped, his once confident stride replaced by a weary shuffle. Jessica was with him, her once perfectly styled hair looking a little unkempt, her vibrant clothes faded. Their conversation seemed tense, punctuated by sharp gestures. They looked smaller, diminished, the light gone from their eyes. They didn't see me, and I felt no urge to make myself seen. Their lives were their own now, shaped by their choices, unburdened by my presence or my resources. Their downfall wasn't my doing, it was their own unraveling. And in that observation, I found not triumph, but a quiet validation of my path. Outside, the city moved on, uncaring and alive. And for the first time, so did I. I spent the next few weeks turning my house into something that finally felt completely mine, completely me, not just a shared space, but a personal sanctuary. Every choice, from the paint color to the placement of a new armchair, was made with a sense of deliberate intention, a celebration of my newfound autonomy. I filled my home with books, with quilts, with the scent of fresh-baked bread, and the quiet hum of my own peaceful existence. One afternoon, as I watered a small pot of herbs on my window ledge, the sunlight warm on my face, I looked out at the city's glow and felt no pain of loss for the big suburban house as it once was, filled with the shadows of past disappointments, of unfulfilled expectations, of unreciprocated love. I had given them what they truly deserved, the opportunity to live with the consequences of their own choices, unburdened by my silent strength, uninfluenced by my endless capacity for forgiveness. And in doing so, I had finally given myself what I truly deserved. A life lived on my own terms, free and whole, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The silence they sought to impose on me became the very space where my truth could finally, gloriously, bloom. It was the ultimate act of self-love, and it was glorious. My life, once defined by the roles I played for others, wife, mother, nurturer, was now defined by my own terms, by my own choices, by the woman I had become through fire and resilience. It was a masterpiece of my own making, painstakingly restored, layer by layer, until its true beauty shone through. The message I carry, the wisdom etched into my very soul is this: never let others define your worth. Never allow kindness to be mistaken for weakness. And never, ever, let anyone take what is rightfully yours: your dignity, your peace, your self-respect, your sanctuary, your very essence, just because they are called family. Sometimes, the most powerful act of love is also the most powerful act of self-preservation. When you finally stand your ground, when you dare to say no to injustice, even when it comes from your own blood, you don't just reclaim your property or your finances, you reclaim control over your entire life. You reclaim your narrative. And that, I assure you, is the most profound victory of all.